Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners.
You live where you want or where you must. In the case of some military people, they get placed in some places where maybe they don't want to be long term, but it just happens to be part of their road. So live there, but invest where it makes sense and where you can get the type of returns that makes it a worthwhile investment.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and guess what? We're back for another exciting episode. This is going to be super amazing. And just really quickly, for those of you who continue to share the podcast across social media, thank you so much. Continue to tag us. We appreciate that. We continue to grow our audience. We continue to be in the top 1.5% of podcasts globally. So thank you so much for that. Also, too, if you have still thinking about writing that honest written review and rating, go ahead and do it. We even have a little video in the link. Just click the link and it'll show you how to do it. I know you've been thinking about it for so long. Just leave the review, honest written review, where you'll even see how we're making the podcast more contoured for you. Speaking of which, if you want to check out any of the episodes, go to firstgencp.com/podcasts, and you can find every single version, video, audio. You can find the transcripts. It's all there. Just go check out firstgencp.com/podcasts. Which will be great. And then listen, today's conversation, listen, if you have ever been or are in the military and you want to figure out how you go from military to full-time investor, or if you've been challenged by living in one place and not being able to invest in another, or if you feel like, hey, listen, I know that there's something more for me out there, I just don't know what it is yet, listen to this conversation that we're going to have in just a couple of minutes with the managing partner of the Admirable Group, Mr. Ismael Reyes. We're going to get to that just after this. So if you want to understand how to go from retired military officer to full-time apartment investor to be able to boost your long-distance investing journey, then guess what? Today's a conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. You know why? Well, because today's guest not only had early life experience working with the American Red Cross, he also dedicated more than 2 decades of his life as a foreign area officer for the U.S. government. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. He also moved into real estate, where he also founded his very first company. He enjoys spending more time with his wife and his 2 kids, and he's the best-selling author of The Bottom Line Upfront, about passive investing in multifamily. It gives me great pleasure today to welcome the founder and managing partner of the Admirable Group, Mr. Ismael Reyes. Ismael, Ray, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Billy. This is great.
Hey, Ray, you know what? I loved our pre-conversation. I'm sure that the entire Going Long family is going to learn so much from your journey, and you're going to be able to continue to help them. I know you have such a focus on education and being able to help others move forward faster, and I can't wait for everybody to get to know more about you, man. So here's the thing. You know I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to get 2 in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the end. And in the middle, you're going to get a bunch of questions, Ray. I just don't know what those questions are. So how about we start with the very first one? Help us understand, where is it that you call home in the U.S.?
Yeah, so I am in Orlando, Florida, really central Florida. And a lot of people know Miami. A lot of folks obviously know Disney World in Orlando. So that's kind of an easy one. But yeah, I've been here for about 3 years now. Once I retired, we moved up this way. It's been about actually 4 years.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Well, yes, lots and lots of people in and out of Orlando. I know it well, especially those of us that have little kids. At least we've talked about it. Some of us have even been there. So appreciate you sharing that with us. Also, Ray, just to help us understand, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you, for you, in the last 24 hours?
In the last 24 hours, I would say that I had a fantastic, I also do my own podcast, and it's more of a meetup, virtual video meetup, and just understanding some ways that the audience can save some money on taxes, right? You don't want to pay Uncle Sam a penny more than you have to. And that's the goal. It isn't to cheat Uncle Sam. It's to make sure you take advantage of it. And we learned some fantastic information during that video of one of the, an experienced CPA that has his own real estate investments that was very useful. So that's been fantastic for me.
Okay, well, absolutely fantastic. And yes, we're also big fans of being able to keep more of your capital, use it in the ways that make you and your family get closer to your life goals faster. And so appreciate you sharing that positive news with us. And here's the other thing, Ray. And I know we're just kind of meeting, but I'm kind of a recovering perfectionist. What that means is I do things sometimes that are some people would consider to be unreasonable, and I try them anyway, like trying to tell your entire backstory in a second and a half. That was never going to happen. So I hope you'll forgive me, but at the same time, I hope you will help me because I would love for you to share your backstory in your own words. And also, if you could share maybe some of the major decisions that you've made to this point in your journey, and then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I was born in Puerto Rico. My family moved us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For those of you that are not sure where that is, it's very close to Chicago, and it's pretty cold up there. But it just happened to be a great place for work. And once a couple of family members moved up there, it just seemed like a great idea for a lot of folks that were looking to better their lives, like we all are, to go there. And so we moved there, and I spent all of my childhood there, from the age of 7. And so, so I had some people say I have a Midwestern accent. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, I'll leave it there. I loved Milwaukee, but it was very cold. And the minute that I could move somewhere it was a little bit warmer, I did. I graduated from Marquette University in Milwaukee, and then happened to move south from there. And in the process of all that, I needed money for college, so I enlisted in the Army, the U.S. Army, to get the benefits. A lot of us, do it for not just serving our country, which is something very critical, but it's also in many ways sometimes it's very simple. It's small decisions like, okay, I need money for college. So got me going on my path to the military. And when I came back from that, it was as a reservist. I really enjoyed my time that I served while I was on active duty doing my training. And so I went to college, finished my degree, got a commission in the U.S. Army as a second lieutenant. And I spent the next 28 years of my life serving the country. I really enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed the challenges that came with that. There were some tough ones, being away from family a lot. But that comes with, part of serving something bigger than yourself. And so it was a sacrifice for my family and but I wouldn't do it any other way. However, there comes a certain point in your life where you have other goals. And one of my other things that I always wanted to do from very young was in real estate. I loved Monopoly. Monopoly was my favorite game. The whole idea of, you start off with one little property and you work your way around, and eventually, it's not about the cash or the money. It's about, are you able to, essentially have people land on your properties, right? And so that kind of stuck with me. And while I was doing my military career, whenever I had an opportunity, I would buy a property. And so once I got to the tail end of my career, I decided that if I was going to do this full time and I really had a passion for it, then I needed to scale up. And I used the vehicle of multifamily investing as a way to do that. And it's a mindset thing. People think that it's too much. I don't have the money. I can't do that. That's not true. This is all teamwork, and we can talk more about that if you like. But that's in a short version. That's it. I started investing in multifamily for the last 4 or 5 years. I've gotten to a certain level, and I really enjoy talking about my journey. Not just that, but how I can help others to get to where they want to go to grow their generational wealth.
Well, in generational wealth is one of those things that we really appreciate. We enjoy talking about here. Ray, I would also just like to say thank you very much for your service. It's one of the things I just would like to recognize you for and appreciate your service for our country. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was really my absolute pleasure, but I appreciate that.
All right. Perfect. Well, listen, so, talk to us a little bit about that, right? You decided that you wanted to, you didn't want to just do the military forever, right? There were some other things that you wanted to be able to do, and it sounded like more time with family and with friends, and it's always interesting, right? I'm always curious, just from the very beginning, like how does real estate? Because there's so many things that you could have chosen, right? So many different things that you could have chosen. Like what was it that made real estate stand out above everything else?
I don't know. I ask myself that all the time. And again, from as young as I can remember, it was something critical to me. The only thing I can kind of point to is I remember when we moved to the U.S., we in Milwaukee, we rented for a while, and then we were bouncing around for a little bit. And then it was just kind of this peak time in my youth where there was some excitement around the opportunity to buy a property. And we bought a property using, a program that allowed us to basically renovate that property using other people's money. Go figure. And we were able to do that. And it was such a great feeling to own something and to be, to be to have it be part of you, right? Whether right, wrong, or indifference, that was something that kind of stuck with me. And then again, it's just throughout our life, my life, part of our, a lot of people in the military, whether they like to or not, they can become accidental landlords. In my situation, it was very deliberate. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people buy a house because they don't want to rent, or they want to do what they want to do in their own homes. And then they, 2-3 years later, they got to move, so now you've got to go somewhere else, and you got to figure out what to do with that asset, with that property that was your home and is no longer your home. It's just an asset that you have that you can either rent, sell, or do something with.
Fantastic. And when you're able to be able to recognize even at an early age, like, hey, listen, these are the things that impact me, and this is what eventually will lead me to a specific type of an asset. It's always nice to understand that. Now, realizing that you said you went from Puerto Rico to Wisconsin, and then as you got your degree, and then you started moving places where it's warmer. By the way, with somebody who lives in the Mediterranean, I can definitely understand wanting to be in places that are much warmer because it's one of those things. But, also one of the things that with me living in Europe and investing exclusively back in the United States, like it's something that I have always done. Like that's the genesis of this podcast. Now I take it to an extreme, right, Ray? Because I'm investing from one continent to the next. But I know that long distance investing is not something that is for everybody. Maybe you could talk to a little bit about, so especially the mindset part of that, which is like, why would someone ever even look to invest beyond where they live? And I mean this in both ways, actively or passively.
Great questions. And actually it's kind of the central theme of the way I came about, right? The way I started my journey, because essentially you hit that point where you have properties in some location that is not your location. And then what do you do with that asset? What do you do with that property? Do you sell it? How do you turn that around? But it struck me that, at the point that you're no longer living in that asset, and you may not ever go back to that location, right? Because a lot of times we move somewhere and it's not going to be home. I know that, but I wanted to make it as homely as possible for my family. But at some point, I've got an asset. And the question is, was it a good acquisition from a financial standpoint or not? And in many cases, I wasn't looking at it, at least at first from that. I was looking at more of, this is where my family needs to be, right? This is where they feel comfortable, they're safe. I'm gone a lot doing, military business. So I want them safe. But at some point, it's an investment. So my thought is, okay, if that's really at the end of the day, the most important thing, when it makes sense to buy in a place because it's a great place from a returns perspective, and it happens to be a place that also feels good, then maybe you keep that asset. But if it's a place that's just home temporarily, then you may want to divest of that and then invest where it makes sense, because you may not live there anymore ever. But so that's kind of it. And that's my mantra. It's like you live where you want or where you must. In the case of some military people, they get placed in some places where maybe they don't want to be long term, but it just happens to be part of their road. So live there, but invest where it makes sense and where you can get the type of returns that makes it a worthwhile investment. So
let's unpack that just a little bit, because I completely agree with you. Like, I'm living in the Mediterranean and I invest where it makes sense because I can't get the type of things that are important to me here, at least. But sometimes there's some trepidation, right? And I even remember the very first time that I purchased a property and I was in Spain, I was like, I really want to be able to because I'm a recovering perfectionist. Like I wanted to be able to have every detail, and I wanted to see everything, and I wanted to be able to do it all because that's just part of who I am. So when you've spoken to other people that have faced the same type of fear that I faced, right? That maybe they're working in a really high paid job and they're busy, but they know that they don't want to be in the stock market. Where do you usually start the conversation for that person so that they can start to get used to the concept beyond just the words that we're sharing with them?
I think the biggest thing that they have to understand is, and a lot of folks that actually try to invest a little bit, then they figure out that it's not as easy as they think. It's not as passive as they think. I think talking about that experience is important because, Billy, you know, and I know that, you know, when you buy a property, you know, you can have third-party management looking over your property, make sure that it's rented. But at the end of the day, it doesn't belong to them. They don't make money, because it's a great investment. They make money on the fact that it's rented. And a lot of times their idea of doing their job is what's easiest, not the best for you as an owner from a returns perspective. So having that in mind, and a lot of people understand that and can talk about that, then the next thing is, okay, so how do I protect myself from that, especially when it's somewhere else? Well, the way you do it is by having a team that is there to take advantage, not to take advantage, to oversee your return, your investment. And we call those asset managers. Mm-hmm. It's an asset manager that actually cares about whether you make money or not the property manager. Unfortunately, their job is to just keep the place filled up and keep it running. And so what gives people comfort is the idea that there's someone else that when that asset management works and it works well, the asset manager makes money because asset managers are also investors in a lot of our deals. So if they win, then the investors, the passive investors, win. And if you're an active investor and you're not at the property because you don't live there, you definitely want somebody on your team that can oversee that property that is not property management. So it's another layer of protection that you have, and then you can do whatever it is that you want. If the idea is to live somewhere else, if the idea is to travel, whatever that idea is, you can rest assured that there's another team of people there to make sure that you're getting the returns on your investment.
Yeah, and that's absolutely critical to think of it as a team sport, and also think about some of the critical players on the team, such as the asset manager, and their role is to manage the asset and those individuals and or companies' teams that are effectively going to be part of the day-to-day operations. And so for that, there is also a compensation, which needs to be so that you don't have to worry about it as someone who's investing passively. Before I ask a little bit about the book and before we get into the Going Long Final Three, so you have this massive passion for wanting to help others, right? And it comes through. It's really, I can feel it. But where does that come from, Ray? I mean, just this desire and passion to want to help to educate others.
I don't know if it comes from my military background. I think it's part of the reason why I love the military. When you think about what the military does, obviously it defends, but it also is there to protect and to serve others. And so I think that's just kind of something that's innate to some people, the want to have that empathy. And in my case, what I want people to know is that, they can do this. It's not my job, because I do take calls for people that want to invest and they have questions for me. It's not my job to figure it out for them. It's my job to give them the background, the guidance that they need so that then they can figure it out for themselves. And frankly, when they figure it out for themselves, they figure it out forever, right? Instead of you feeding them. It's kind of like the old story, right? You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Yeah. And so my job is to give people the tools and to give them, my story as an example of how it can be done.
Fantastic. So, and like you said, a lot of that from it's not just protect to serve, but also to be able to, well, not just defend, but to protect and to serve and serve others, and having that service mindset and being able to help others to be able to move forward through education. So, one of the things that I mentioned early on is that you are also a best-selling author, right? And so one of the things that you've talked about this was the bottom line up front, which is about, passively investing in multifamily real estate. what was the inspiration, or maybe even before the inspiration? Tell us a little bit about the book. How is this going to help people, and then also talk to us about what the inspiration was for you to go ahead and write that book.
Yeah, no, great question. I think it's twofold. I mean, to me, the book was as a way. So when you're in the business of real estate and you're an expert at real estate, that's one thing. And you get, you have your experience, you have your acquisitions, and you've got time that shows people that you have that capability, right? When you're in the military, you have a capability or a skill set to do military things. And my thought was, as I was making that transition, understanding that it was not a passive goal for me, but a very active goal, I needed to, one, learn the tricks and the tools of the trade. One, switching over from single family to multifamily, which language is a little bit different, but pretty similar. But nevertheless, there's a transition that has to happen there. So I started writing blogs as a way to kind of convey what I was learning and what the key concepts were. And then I realized, okay, I'm writing these blogs and it's helping me with my audience of folks that are wanting to potentially invest in our deals, because again, we bring capital to bear, our capital and other people's capital. So that's an important part of the business. So I need to gain credibility, as not just an officer. And I tell the story because it's true, because one of the first things I would always talk about real estate in when I was in the military, and people that knew me knew that I was doing real estate, but there was a very core few. The question that I got a lot as I started talking more about real estate and potentially going after these larger assets with other people's capital, it's like, well, Ray, you're a great military officer. I heard great things about you, but what does that have to do with real estate? And why should I trust you, to be able to provide some sort of great return? I mean, it sounds great, but I don't know you. So it was an opportunity to be able to develop that subject matter expertise that I had through self-learning that you really can't demonstrate unless you start talking to people. But, in this business, a lot of what we do is electronically. This podcast, for example, Billy, you've got people listening to you from around the world. A lot of them will never meet you in person, right? It's just the truth of it, right? And so the idea is putting something out there that gives people an idea of the fact that they can trust not just you as a person, but you as a professional in that field. So that's kind of how it started. But it was also a way for me to talk a little bit about, from an educational standpoint, how I made the journey from, point A to point Z in my journey to invest in multifamily. Because, and the reason I use the word bluff, bottom line up front, is that's a very, very, very military term. It's a way that we convey information to leadership whose time is very busy. So when they talk to you, they want to hear the bluff. Tell me the bluff about whatever the situation is. Don't give me all the details. So the book is not this long, drawn out thing. It's a very linear kind of procedural book about how you can get from not knowing anything about multifamily investing as a passive investor to investing in your first deal. And then not only that, but overseeing what the asset manager may be providing you.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Really, really appreciate that. So both building up the subject matter expertise and also being able to share your journey really at the genesis of being able to have invested the time to write the book. So I really appreciate that. And also giving us some insight into to military mindset and the bluff and the right up front and stick to the point and help to share the information. So here's the thing, Ray, as our special guest, it's time for us to get to the going long final three. And the thing is, I never ask any of our special guests, and you're our special guest today, the going long final three, unless you tell me you're ready. So my question for you is, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, man. I was expecting you to say, yeah, of course. I was born ready, man. Of course. I know this. All right. So here we go. So Ray, we started with you over in Central Florida, so over in Orlando, and I'd like to bring things over to this side of the pond since I'm a guy from Columbus, Ohio, who now lives in the Mediterranean over here in Barcelona. So help us understand, what is your favorite European city that you have either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
I think I've visited several cities, but it was mostly on my way to some other location. And I won't go into any details, but that was kind of my experience. But I do have a bucket list, and I chose this business for my ability to be able to travel. And as long as I've got good connectivity, I can do this from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is, okay, I want to get down to Europe.
Mm.
My first step in Europe is Rome.
Okay.
Rome, because of the history, the rich history of Rome, the Colosseum, Vatican City, the art, the architecture, all these sort of things, and that, and the fact that my understanding is it's very central. So as a good starting location, you can kind of do what's key to Rome fairly quickly. So I think that's my first one on my list. And it's not going to be, we're not talking years down the road here. We're talking either this year, later this year, or early next year.
All right. Fantastic. So Rome it is. So everybody, you'll see that in the show notes. Question number 2 really has a lot to do with the experience that I've had in meeting people who are very, very successful. I'm sure you meet lots of successful people. Ray, I consider you to be someone who's very successful. You're impacting lives. You've been doing that, over 2 decades with the military positively, and now in this new phase of your life as well. And hopefully one of the things that you've recognized, very similar to what I've recognized, Ray, is that, when successful people have a plan, any plan, it doesn't matter the plan. Every single time that they put a plan together, And one of the reasons they're so successful so quickly is because every single time they get everything right perfectly in the plan from the very beginning all the way through, which allows. Do that again. Sorry about that. No, Ray, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. I can tell Ray's really worried
about it. Never happens that way.
I was worried. I was like, Ray, what's his name? I think Ray was really worried about me. No, I'm just joking, Ray. It's just joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's an inside joke. It's one of the things with me and the Go Along family. I like to have a little bit of fun here. So anyway, of course, like you said, of course not. Like really successful people don't get things right the first time, every time, and that's why they go much faster. No. They usually make 20 to 50 times more mistakes than anybody else because they're always trying new things, always.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. In the beginning was kind of that was a joke, but this part is serious. And the reason I say that it's serious is because, every single time that I've seen a successful person or interacted with them and they've made a relevant mistake, or maybe you call it a learning opportunity, or maybe you call it whatever they expected to happen didn't happen. So that mistake happened. They don't focus on the mistake, and I don't want you to focus there, but every single time they learn from that mistake, but then what they do next is amazing. They put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same thing happening again. So I would love for you to share, not the mistake, but what's the one lesson that you know that the Going Long family needs to hear today? What's that one lesson you want to share with us?
I think the biggest lesson, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, is that you need someone that can oversee your return on investment, and not just a property manager. Don't make the mistake to think that that one single point of failure is enough. You need to have a couple of layers that can really help you do this. You're either going to be that layer, that second layer, if you have the time. But honestly, a lot of professionals and people living overseas or in other locations, they don't have that time. So you need to have someone that can do that. And I learned that lesson the hard way, because I had a property when I was stationed in Mexico City at the embassy, and I had a property in Texas, and the property manager had a little bit of a tough time with the tenant, and it became a little bit too much for the property manager, so they just quit. I quit, and so here I am, working with our counterparts in Mexico City. Pretty far away. It's not super far, but it's not like I can get on a car and go there.
Yeah.
And how do we solve that situation? So I learned really quickly that I needed to have somebody else that could do this. And sometimes we want to say, okay, it's family. But, family, it's not they may not have the time that they tell you they're going to have. Yep. So it's better to have, factor in the cost of having somebody else that you pay to be able to handle those kind of things for you. And so you have a separate layer and not a single point of failure.
Fantastic. Have someone to oversee your ROI and avoid the single point of failure. Absolutely love that. And so lastly, and I know once again, just as a reminder, and I know everyone, you can find Ray's book, Bluff, Bottom Line Up Front, with passive investing in multifamily. You can definitely find that out there. Just wanted to give you one more plug on that. But, aside from that, Ray, what is one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family today?
Yeah. So the book, and I have to refer to this every once in a while because, like you, I'm a perfectionist. and I always want to do it myself. And as many times I spent in the military, I still find myself, sometimes we call it in the weeds, instead of being at that, that taller, that higher level. And so the book that I recommend is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And the book is all about how to delegate, right? Yep. Do what you want to do, what you're good at, what you're passionate, because nobody's going to do that really better than you. But there are a lot of things in this business that you may not be good at, whether it's the underwriting, whatever it is. There may be some other things that you're just not very good at. Find people that are, and let them do that for you, because that's their passion. So this is a team sport, like we talked about. You got to have the right team together, and you just got to let them get out of their way. Do what you're good at. Let them do what they're good at, and you will be, as a team, much more successful.
Absolutely love that. Who Not How. Once again, Dan Sullivan. We're going to include this link in the show notes. Don't worry, everybody. You'll be able to get it. You'll see it really, really easily. But one of the things, Ray, that just amazes me is how quickly these conversations go by. Like, they just fly by. I'm thinking here in the very beginning, you're talking about the conversation that you were having yesterday with your meetup group, and being able to realize how you can save virtually, or really save and keep Uncle Sam out of your pocket, as I like to say, being able to keep more and more of your tax dollars. And you share your story from going from Puerto Rico to Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, you wanted to get closer to where it was nice and warmer, and you dedicated, just over 2 decades of service. And once again, thank you for that, with the government and a number of different types of roles. And at the same time, you realize, like, hey, listen, this is great, but I also want to be able to create time and carve out space and time for me and my loved ones. And so when you thought about when you were that little kid, and you realized that there was that renting, owning, this kind of thing was in your mind, it played out later in life. And not only did you then take action and say, hey, listen, I'm going to purchase this property, and you're moving, and then you figured out, hey, listen, how am I going to manage these types of things? You realize that, hey, listen, you've been able to learn a skill set, and now you've taken that skill set with an asset such as real estate, and you're continuing to help to educate others. That service mindset that we talked about before. And not only were you doing that, you've also started to memorialize that through the book that you've written. And so, I'm saying all this stuff, and the Going Long family is just saying, yeah, Billy, but just ask him the question, please, because that's what we really want to know. So help us understand, Ray, what is the best way for the Going Long family to find out more about you and what it is that you're doing, and how we could also get involved?
Thanks, Billy. No, you're absolutely right. And I love, if you haven't figured that out by now, I love talking about this business because of all the goodness that it can give people. The easiest way to get a hold of me is through my website, IsmaelReyes.com. IsmaelReyes.com. You can literally schedule a call with me, a Zoom call, whatever, from that website. You can go to all my social media from there. And I just love talking about this and helping in any way I can.
Okay, fantastic. So Ismael Reyes, you can check it out. If you're watching the video version, you can actually see it over his right shoulder or left shoulder, which should be fantastic. Or at least I think that's when we finish it, it will look like that. But listen, Ray, I just want to say thank you so very much for deciding to invest your time with me and the entire Going Long family today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Billy. My pleasure.
All right, perfect. So if you give me just like 10 seconds, I'm just going to wrap up a couple things here with the Going Long family, and then I'll have you out of here, Ray. So listen, Going Long family, Ray shared it all. He gave it all. He even told you about his book. Listen, and he's got so much education that you can continue to find out more about. Take today's conversation, share it with family and friends, go from theory to practice, talk about the things that Ray talked to you about today. And you know what, while you're putting this information into practice, I'm going to be here preparing for the next conversation. So until then, go ahead and make it a great day. And thank you very much.